Hey everyone, it's Lindsey Baker with the Action Hour. We're here every Saturday at 10, and today I have an amazing show for you. Have you ever felt at a loss for words when you want to talk to someone about going vegan or animal rights? Well, this show today is going to help you with that. It's going to help you empower yourself to be able to talk to people knowing a lot of information, because we have with us today the Animal Justice Academy with Kimberly Carroll, Jeff Gear, sorry about that. Oh gosh, I'm doing terrible. Chandra Sakara. Wow, thank you guys for being on today. And we're so excited to hear about this this new learning opportunity for everyone, really. So why don't you tell us a little bit about it, Kimberly, since you're very much involved in setting this whole thing up?
Yeah, well, and part of me is regretting that. I'm loving it, but I have had about 10 hours of sleep in total this week. So Charu and I have talked at a couple of points in the last week where we've both been like on no sleep and just a little bit giddy, right, Charu?
Yeah, that's right.
Why don't we jump right into the program and talk about a little bit like what this program is all about. Yeah. And we want to emphasize also that it is free. The 6-week course is absolutely free.
Absolutely. So Animal Justice Academy is a 6-week advocacy boot camp for people who want to make a difference for animals in the world. So it is a course that started this past week, but it's all in motion. And we now have 5,000 people enrolled in this program. And the more the merrier. We want even more people. And how it works is we have a course platform where there are probably going to be about 60, 70 modules in all by the end of the course. We are having live events every Tuesday and Thursday evening, of course, online, where we do panels. We have a very active Facebook group. We're creating action challenges that we're doing collectively. And it's just...
Why don't you tell us what would be an example of an active challenge? Because you're giving us a lot of information at once and it's all wonderful. But what would that be like?
So, for example, we're going to do an action challenge around ag gag laws, which have really rose up, quite a lot in Canada recently, but are also a big problem in the States still. And so, for example, we'd have an action around ag gag where we would ask people to use some of the tools that we've taught them in that particular week, whether that be social media skills, whether that be effective communication skills, whether that be using their artistry or fundraising. We're trying to show people how they can be animal advocates in a way that feels right for them and using the skills and background that is unique to them. I think, Lindsay, a lot of people think if you're going to be an animal advocate, you have to be there standing with a sign on a street or yelling or whatever. And that is a form. Like, we have to do public outreach. Some of us need to do that. But there are also so many other ways to be animal advocates, like Charu here, who is an animal advocate by doing incredible science to change, the landscape for animals in Canada. And
let's talk about that for a moment. Let's bring Charu in a moment and talk about that. Shara, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, what your background is, and your institute, and how you are putting this into work, what Kimberly is talking about, your individual talents and skills, utilizing those.
So I'm a scientist. I am a biomedical researcher. I used to do a lot of work with animal models, so working with mouse models of heart failure and diabetes. This was quite a while ago. And then I walked away from it all. Actually, I had a few personal experiences where I realized firsthand that animal testing isn't the answer to all of our problems, that animal testing can quite often be futile. 95% of drugs tested to be safe and effective in animals fail in human clinical trials. And we have about 85,000 chemicals on the current market, and that we don't have full toxicological profiles, meaning we don't really understand the toxicology of these chemicals, how they would affect us. And all of this is being done currently in animals. And if we were to rely on animals to tell us how we would respond to drugs, it'll take us several hundred years to find out the adverse effects of these chemicals. So I walked away from animal research, and I started joining these international groups working, and mostly scientists working to promote alternatives to animal testing. And Canada actually didn't have a center. And so it was something I built from scratch, the Canadian Center for Alternatives to Animal Methods at the University of Windsor. And so currently I do a lot of research work, trying to create disease in a dish. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. And I'm also creating academic programs to train the next generation of scientists, ethicists, and policymakers to think outside the cage. And I'm also working with regulators such as Health Canada, US FDA, EPA, and other global centers for alternatives to develop, validate, and promote the adoption of non-animal methods for biomedical research and chemical safety testing.
I was just going to ask you about that in terms of what is going on in the US and elsewhere, and how likely are these organizations to adopt the non-animal testing model?
Oh, it's actually quite promising around the world right now. So the United States is leading along with the European Union. I'm going to say the European Union is far, much more way ahead than North America. But even in the United States, the US has several national strategic roadmaps. So multiple federal agencies such as the EPA, FDA, and a number of other 16 other federal agencies that do animal testing have come together and come up with a national strategic roadmap to phase out animal testing. And the EPA in particular, so the Environmental Protection Agency in the US, is responsible for approving drugs, approving chemicals such as pesticides and other industrial chemicals. They have a mandate, they have legislation to reduce and replace animal testing for that, for chemical safety. And the former EPA administrator declared in September 2019 that they would like to end animal testing for chemical safety by 2035. So, there is quite a bit of hope there, but in Canada, it's not quite the same. We don't even have a National Animal Welfare Act. We don't have the funding, the legislation, or anything else in place to really shift away from this. But there are groups that are trying to do this.
Yes, and Kimberly, you belong to one of those groups, Animal Justice, right?
Yeah.
So Is that you want to talk a little bit about animal justice? Because it's kind of the background of how what the Academy was grown out of. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Animal Justice, we are colleagues with Charu and her organization. We lead the legal fight for animal protection in Canada. So we are trying to change things on a legal level, on a political level, and in the court of public opinion. So we generally, we are placed in a wonderful position because we work with a lot of organizations to create forward momentum legislatively with a lot of different groups. And so the Academy was not only our opportunity to kind of bring some of these people that we love and we work with and collaborate with to more people, but also it was an opportunity to get more people on the ground working towards the goals of all of these important leaders in our movement that are requiring money, public pressure, all that sort of thing. So.
Right. So the public can be very helpful, particularly at this time during COVID. And I've been doing a lot of interviews about digital activism, what you can do from your own desk, staying at home, being completely safe from COVID. So this really dovetails right into that. And it's an amazing synergy that we really want to get people to know about. Guys, this is an opportunity for you to get a free course. Please share this out if you think this is a great idea. And of course, I know you do. Please share this out to everyone you know and get involved. Now, when I heard about this just this week, I actually had a chance. Kimberly had talked to me about it a few months ago, but I just found out about it. One of my questions was, what is the time commitment involved? So maybe if we walk, Kimberly, if we get involved a little bit in the course, and then we'll bring Jeff in, and he's going to talk about the first week and what he was talking about there. But let's just kind of run them through a couple of slides here, particularly the curriculum and the commitment slide.
Okay.
If you would, Tim.
So, so it's a pretty robust course. We really wanted to give people that are not only veteran animal advocates out there, extra tools and take their game to the next level, but we really wanted to be able to take people who are animal lovers and maybe are just dipping their toe into this arena. We really wanted to give them an education. We wanted to give them the foundation. So the first week that we have just been through and will be available for anybody who signs up is the foundation. So that's where we talked about all the areas of animal use, animal suffering, and went into a lot of details. So for example, Jeff's module was just, even for somebody who'd worked in farm advocacy for a long time, there was, like me, there was a lot of stuff I learned for the first time. And then the second week, it's all about how to get advocacy woven through your different communities, whether that's work, whether that's school, whether that's your church or your synagogue, and really using the communities that you are in and finding ways to insert that into where you are right here, right now. Again, that idea that you don't have to be a different person, go to a different place. There are all sorts of really powerful ways to start weaving your animal advocacy into your everyday life. And then the third week is...
Let's just hold it there for a second, because let's just go into the first and second week a little more deeply, because we got a lot of time to go through all of these. Yeah, I don't want to breeze through them too quickly. So Jeff, you were one of the speakers the first week. Can you go into a little bit more about what you were talking about and kind of fill us in?
Yeah. So in the first week, there's lots of different subjects and different areas in modern day where animals are exploited. Obviously, Sharu is talking about animals used in testing and cosmetics. There's a module on animals used in entertainment, fashion. My piece is the animals used in food industries and animal agriculture. And what's exciting to me about this module is just the capacity that a single person has to make an impact in the world. Just reading the comments underneath, there are people who, I imagine the people watching this stream are largely vegan, but there's a lot of non-vegan people taking this course and learning about animal agriculture and learning about how we're responsible personally, for animal suffering around the world. And it's exciting just when you think about it. I know it's often we can feel kind of powerless. You look at the scale and scope of animal suffering in the world, and you think oh man, how can I make a change? It feels so hopeless. But the reality is, if you're just say, and this is just talking about animals used in food, never mind all of the other sectors. If you're an average consumer of animal products and you choose to be vegan, that's literally thousands of animals spared the nightmare of the slaughterhouse over the course of just one person's life. But I think the impact is a lot greater than that, because you think about it, anytime somebody chooses to be vegan, that means everybody in their social network then knows one more vegan, just by being vegan, not even doing any activism at all. Just by being vegan itself, all of those people know one more vegan, family, friends, coworkers, classmates. And just by knowing one more vegan, all of those people are just one little step closer to making the same decision themselves. And it's the story of animals used in agriculture. It's just so compelling. in the module, I didn't really, as a former undercover investigator, I didn't really talk about what I saw while working in farms and slaughterhouses so much. I just spoke about the standard practice, like how animals suffer when all the rules and regulations are followed and everything goes right. And the story is so compelling. Like, if you were to treat a dog or a cat the way we legally treat cows, pigs, chickens, sheep, fish, crabs, lobsters, if you were to treat a dog or a cat that way, you would go to prison for criminal animal abuse.
That's right.
And like, obviously, the experience of having your body parts cut off, being mutilated, being confined, and obviously being slaughtered, that experience would be no different for a dog than it is for a pig. The story is just so compelling, and it's powerful. I know that. I mean, that's why I went vegan, and that's why a lot of people choose to be vegan.
And I think it's great that, like you say, you know, I was thinking about maybe not enough thoughts on this, because I know there's so many vegans like myself that would love to have information and this empowerment to talk intelligently and being informed, well-informed. But there are, like you say, so many non-vegans that will become educated from this. And that's why it's super important to share this out, because you're going to be helping getting this word out. You're doing vegan activism or animal rights activism right now by sharing this out. And I think, Kimberly, that was your point, wasn't it? That it's so easy. I think that's what you're trying to, I don't want to speak for you, but I think that's what you were saying.
Yeah. It's a lot of people, you know, we were just seeing a lot of people through our work with animal justice that were really upset by the undercover investigations we'd show, or the petitions and the actions, but they didn't know what to do beyond that. And so we went, this is not just us. This is a lost resource within the entire animal rights movement. I think we've got organizations who are trying to do really great things, but we're limited in our resources, our people power. And so we can't put all of these thousands, millions of people that want to do work for animals, want to help animals. We can't put them to work. Like, we just don't have the people power. So we went, why don't we have something really robust that they can go through, that will give them all of the basics, will allow them to feel confident about the facts and how to bring out the facts and how to just be with other people, you know? I think that's one of the other pieces that's really important about this academy, is we really are trying to create a very inclusive, a very kind, a very connected kind of vibe in this community. We really want people, again, whether they're not vegan yet, or whether they've been at it for 4 decades, animal activism, we really want people to work together, and we want people to feel welcomed to this community, no matter who they are, no matter what color their skin is, no matter where they come from in the world. So
absolutely.
And so we've, I mean, I think Jeff and Jeff's been in the crowd and in the live events and in the chats and everything. And I think, you know, you probably agree, Jeff, we have a really beautiful crew of people, don't we?
I wanted to ask you a question about, Jeff, you can answer this one. Looking at the chat groups, what are the reactions of the non-vegans when, as you just said, Jeff, you would never treat a dog or a cat like this? What are the people watching the undercover and seeing a little snippet of what actually goes on? What are the non-vegans? How are the reactions in the comments?
A lot of the comments, like, there's a lot that that people don't know about. So I mean, there's a lot of shock. It's kind of hard to believe how bad it is. Like, a lot of people, as soon as you become vegan, you feel like you're living in the Twilight Zone. Like, otherwise, like, all the people around you, otherwise nice, kind, compassionate people, are participating in one of the most egregious atrocities in human history. So there's definitely shock. But there's also as I was saying, like, yeah, there are non-vegans taking the course and saying, oh, I never knew about this, and I'm not touching say dairy or egg products again. People saying how compelled they were, and that as a result they want to be vegan. So that's the exciting part. That's probably the nicest thing you could ever say to a vegan animal rights activist, is that they heard what you said, and that as a result, they're choosing to be vegan. It's so exciting.
I think they said if you as a vegan convert one person a year, if every vegan did that exponentially within a couple of years, we'd have amazing majority of people would be vegan. So I think, and they said that should be a goal of each vegan, to convert at least one person a year. Doctor, I wanted to bring you in the conversation because you were also in the first module. So can you talk a little bit about what you shared in that module in the first week?
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Okay.
My module is, my module is mostly to explain what animal testing is, and just to give a little bit of a background of it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's true that for the past 100 years, we have relied on animals, and we should never deny the sacrifices that animals have made. I always want to acknowledge the sacrifices that we have made, because most of the textbook knowledge that we have in the life sciences today, that knowledge has come from all the animal studies. We know so much about the biochemistry of our organ systems, how things function, what the molecular basis of many diseases are. But at the same time, and we often hear about these breakthroughs in medical labs where someone's cured some disease, some prominent university somewhere. We often hear this in the news, that this research group has cured this disease, or this vaccine has worked in this animal, or this medication has worked for Alzheimer's disease. Whatever it is, we always hear these stories. So, but what we don't often hear about is the failures of animal testing. That the failures actually outweigh the progress that we have made. For the amount of research that we do, for the amount of testing, for the amount of money and intellectual resources we've spent on animal testing over the past, let's say even the 50 years, we don't see the progress. And one of the biggest examples that I bring up is Alzheimer's disease. It's been over 100 years since Dr. Alzheimer discovered Alzheimer's disease in his human patients, and we've spent an enormous amount of time and energy and money studying Alzheimer's disease, but we don't have a single disease-modifying drug, meaning there are no drugs for Alzheimer's disease right now that changes the disease progression. There are 4 drugs which can kind of manage certain symptoms, but there is a 99.6% failure rate in Alzheimer's disease drugs. All these drugs that worked in animals don't work in humans. And we don't even understand the molecular basis of this disease in humans. So there is a need for a major paradigm shift from going from an animal-centered biomedical research paradigm to a human biology-based paradigm. So this is what I kind of talked about, what the problems are and what does it really mean? What does animal testing really mean? Some people don't really understand or know the background of it. So I kind of went through in my presentation about, so what does it mean that when we study Alzheimer's disease in a mouse model? Well, first, most of these animals don't get human diseases the way we get them. So we have to actually first create the disease in these animals. So in Alzheimer's cases, for example, we could do surgeries or remove certain parts of the brain, or chemically destroy parts of the brain of an animal, or feed them a certain diet. So there are different ways or genetically modified. Most of the Alzheimer's disease models, for example, are genetically modified animals. So I went through all of these things about, first we create the model, then we try to develop drugs against them, and then most of them work in animals, but the moment we take them to human clinical trials, they start failing, because these animals cannot really tell us about how we respond, how we develop disease, and how we respond to drugs. We are not 70 kilogram mice, rats, guinea pigs, rabbits, cats, dogs, sheep, or monkeys. So I think we've come to a point in human history where we really have to take look at everything that we've learned from animals, take it and move on from there. Right. It's time to focus on our biology. And one of the last things I said in my talk is that it's paradoxical that we know more about animal biology than human biology. There are biochemical processes in our body in humans that we aren't aware of, but we know everything about it in an animal, like mice and rats, which are the most widely used animals in science.
Which doesn't help us at all, right? As humans, and that's why so many diseases like cancer have not been cured. And we're giving money to these organizations that are using animals to try and cure cancer and other diseases. And it's wonderful that you are bringing that awareness to the public. Kimberly, I wanted to talk about some more of the faculty. So I'll just put up the slide. And if you are in the animal rights movement, this is the who's who. You have so many wonderful people. You have Dr. Silas Rao, who was just on before with the Vegan 2026 conversion kickoff this morning, and so many other wonderful people. I want to get you back on camera though. So why don't you talk a little bit about some of the others that are going to be presenting, and then we'll go back through and you can talk more about the curriculum.
Yeah, so we have a lot of real sort of shining stars in the Canadian animal rights movement, but we also have some international folks as well. And one of the first modules of this coming week is Dr. Melanie Joy. She is a leading expert in the psychology of vegan advocacy and animal advocacy. And she's going to talk to us about how to talk to those that are close to us about animal issues. It seems like it's something that should be a no-brainer, but it's probably, as we spoke in one of our live panels this week, it's one of the hardest things is how do you deal with your family and your closest friends who you expect to be the most supportive to you, but are actually battling you the most on something that is so deeply important to you. We have a badass vegan, John Lewis, really talking about the power of media and how he's managed to harness it and give us some lessons around that. Joanne MacArthur, world-renowned photographer who has gone into every animal use industry around the world and taken pictures, taken photos, and had photos published in the National Geographic magazine. We, at Animal Justice, politics is really important to us. So we've managed to get a few of our national politicians to take part in this. So we're going to, a leader or the former leader of the Green Party, Elizabeth May, and then Nathaniel Erskine Smith he's a federal representative in Canada who has just done an amazing job for animals in the current government. He has moved some stuff forward that, like our ban on whale and dolphin captivity. We're now working on a ban for apes and elephants, and so to be able to get inside the brains of some politicians and to be able to know how as constituents do we reach these people, do we influence them, and it's actually easier than we think. So I could go on and on.
So let me just ask you a couple of questions in between, and I will have you go on and on. One of my questions is, of course, being in the US and other parts of the world watching, I know that the legislation and the people you're talking about, the leaders you're talking to, are Canadian, but this course actually is quite useful for everyone. Do you want to just address that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. We're based in Canada, so there are references to Canada and there's some focuses, but generally everything we're talking about is applicable universally, especially any of the tips and tools that we're teaching, from how to get more vegan products on store shelves and on restaurant menus, how to do more effective social media graphics, how to write a good letter to the editor. I mean, this is all stuff across the board that you can use no matter what country you're in.
Since we can't really get into the module until you enroll, and I guess I am going to enroll, so I could have done that, but we haven't done that. So if somebody signs up and I'm coming in a week late, then are these all separate video modules that we can watch, or how is it set up?
Yeah. So we're dripping each week of content. We're like releasing each week of content one by one, because otherwise people would be very overwhelmed. They were already a little
Yeah.
like overwhelmed by the first week and how much there was, there. And so we're really making a point of rolling out a week at a time. But once that week is rolled out, it's out. So people can, at any point when you join in the program, or even after the program, we're going to have it available, and people can go back and take things at their own speed. We say sort of take it one step at a time. And so there's video modules. There's about 10 modules per week, video modules that are fairly robust, and a lot of resources, a lot of info, documents, fact sheets. And then we also, like I said, we also have our twice a week, Tuesday and Thursday evenings in Eastern Standard Time. We are doing panels that are just really interesting. And I mean, on our Tuesday panel, we had 400 people join us. It was really electric energy, and our panelists are just top rate. So we're having amazing conversations so far.
So people during the panels, are they in the front seat where they can ask questions, or they chat, or how do they communicate?
Yeah, so we're using the large meeting Zoom format. So we actually see people. At the beginning, we have a chance to see everybody on camera, because we wanted that sense of community. We really, especially during COVID times, the best of times, us, sort of animal advocates feel very isolated in the world. And so now in COVID, we especially do. So for people to be able to come on and see all of these faces that are committed to doing this work, it's very heartening. And we've heard from people that they just feel renewed about this, renewed about being an advocate again. And then, through the chat, we have question and answer periods. And then we also are doing breakout rooms. So in order for people to be able to have small groups and to be able to interact and strategize and collaborate and share initiatives, discuss. So people are really pumped up about that as well.
Wow. So Jeff and Doctor, will you both be continuing in the program, and will you be available to speak more, or is your module complete now?
Jeff's like, I don't know.
My module is complete. I'm not aware of any other modules or panels coming down the line. However, at least in my case, and it might be similar with Charu, my social media contact information is available. And I'd encourage anybody who has any questions about anything to connect with me. And especially if they want to go vegan, I would be especially thrilled to help out or answer any questions anybody might have. So there's still a bit of interaction that way.
Yeah, and I would love to have you on sometime to talk about your undercover work and go into you've got a huge back history. Same with you, Dr. Chandra. Charu, sorry. Can you tell us a little bit about, more about how you feel this program will help people and how they can utilize it?
So I think it'll give, I think my module will answer some basic questions that people may have had, because oftentimes when I go into like public events and other things, I often get asked about what animal testing really is. And some people think that it's just for cosmetics or just for drugs, but it's not. It encompasses a lot of different things that we don't even like. Things like paint are tested on animals. Pretty much anything that has a symbol, on these product packages, we usually see it's a mutagen or a carcinogen or some sort of a hazard. All those things come from a classification, a globally accepted classification system. And to get those classifications for certain products, especially chemicals, you have to go through animal testing at this point in time, So by 2035, hopefully we will have reduced most of it. And especially if the United States and the European Union take a lead in this area, that's very likely to happen. But that doesn't mean...
What's the opposition? Is it because the infrastructures to do this new type of testing is not set up and it's economically not economically going to be very expensive, or what is the thing that, or is it just going to take that long? I mean, to those of us that know about the suffering, even though that's great, 2035, but why isn't this out in the public knowledge, and why is it so difficult to have this change happen if indeed by doing testing this way we are not serving human beings that are ill? So why is there such resistance, I guess, is my question.
Well, there are a number of different reasons for that. First of all, I mean, this is an institution that's been in place for over 100 years, right? So we have, animal testing has been the predominant, it's the way things have been. And so it is difficult to change that culture from that point of view. Scientists, even though we are supposed to rely solely on scientific evidence, there's still, emotions and other things attached to this whole thing, that if we only went by evidence, we would have changed the system a long time ago. But then it's a systemic issue. There are things happening at many levels. For example, if you're talking about biomedical research, so this is where people would, create certain animal models of disease and try to understand it and develop drugs against it. So this whole process, when you have institutions in the US, it is the National Institutes of Health that give out billions of dollars of funding every year to so many universities across the country. You have these peer reviewers. So when you want to apply for a grant to National Institutes of Health, you're applying for funding, and your grant, your work is being reviewed by people who are also a part of the system. So oftentimes, even if you don't propose, this is one of the problems that a lot of my peers who are in alternatives field right now, when they propose a grant that involves only human-based testing, that doesn't mean just going like human-based as in human cell and tissue and other kinds of testing. When you propose to do work based just on human biology-based methods, these reviewers come back and ask you, where's the animal model? Because that's how it's been for the last 100-some years. And so it is difficult to change that for some odd reason. And it's partly cultural. I mean, we live in a society, we live in a scientific culture that's ingrained in animal research, a culture that considers curing animals is equivalent to curing humans. So it takes time to change that. But at the same time, the infrastructure is not there. So if a researcher really wanted to switch, it's not easy to get access to human tissues and cells. We don't have those connections made between medical schools and hospitals, and to go through the proper ethical process of obtaining human samples. We don't have the laws, and then there are no incentives for a lot of people to do this. And it's also an industry that makes a lot of money. A little black mouse gets sold for about $30 US, and if you want to buy a diabetic rat, it's about $450 US. So it's also an industry. So there's lots of different layers.
There's so much information. You must come back. You must come back and talk about this. But I do want to make sure we have time to go over the rest about the classes, and what you're talking about is wonderful. I want to hear lots more. But Kimberly, let's go back. You talked about week 1 and 2. Let's go through the rest of the modules, if you would like, so that people have an idea what else they'll be learning.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So we touched a little bit already on engaging in the political system, but a lot of people think it's a big mystery to get political, and we really want to bust that mystery. We want to show people how easy it is to reach out to their local representative or their federal representative, and to be able to, how do you conduct a meeting? What do you say to them? What do you pitch to them? What's the sort of tone that you need to use around entering this political forum? How do you help animal-friendly and veg-friendly legislators get elected or stay elected? How do our work around our voting systems matter to animals? Like we're working on electoral reform here in Canada, and it's actually would be a huge boon for animal rights if we were able to get electoral reform. So we explain why. And then in week 4, we go into really the nuts and bolts of exposing animal exploitation. So some of the traditional things like demonstrations and disruptions and public outreach. But we also look at some other ways of doing it through through just more, like I said, more subtle activism. And so, yeah, it's that week is a really interesting week. I'm just trying to. Oh, so yeah, we are talking about also some of the systems that are in place, like complaint systems, and we also talk about knowing your rights as an activist. So if you are going to be out there, you should know what's going on with your rights and how to protect yourself that way. And I'm going to be talking about bridge building strategies. So when you are out there and you are sharing these hard truths with people, how do you do it in a way that doesn't get a wall thrown up in between you and that person? So there's some really particular techniques that I've used over the years, and I've used with the people I work with, and we'll also be doing an amazing panel that week about collaborating with the Indigenous rights movement on animal protection. So that's one thing that I want to just say, Lindsey. We are trying to do a lot around intersectionality in this program. We really feel it's like incredibly that making our movement more diverse and inclusive is a cornerstone of where we need to go right now in the animal advocacy movement. So we are trying to find ways where we've got a lot of teachers in this program teaching us ways to find more racial equity and how to be able to sort of wake up a little bit more to our privilege and how to honor food justice issues. So like I said, it's this was a really important piece. And yeah, we have sorry, go ahead, Lindsey.
I was just going to say, so yeah, it's great what you're talking about. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but so the next module, week 5, will be about influencing and social media engagement.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. I mean, as a former television host and producer, I've recognized how important this part of the equation is. I think this is one of the things animal justice does really well, mostly because Camille Labchuk, who runs it, is a former press secretary, and I'm a former television reporter. So we've recognized that getting these issues out into traditional media and social media are just and in the right way are just so vital. So we're going to really talk about some of the brass tacks of that, like how do you get opinion articles published? Again, something a regular person can do. Letters to the editor. I know people kind of go, "Oh, that's just so old-fashioned," but they are effective. It's one.
Oh yeah, they're great. I mean,
parts of a paper, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and again, everybody uses social media, but we've got our social media expert Shannon Nickerson, who's going to teach how to do it well. Really, like some really handy tips and tricks around how to really get your message out there in a way that resonates with people.
It's difficult because I do a channel. I have very high views on an app called Rizzle, and a lot of my outreach as a vegan is on that network, almost exclusively non-vegan. Wow. So it is very difficult to walk that line between turning your audience off by informing them and giving them the awareness they need. So these tips will be amazingly helpful for all of us that are doing that. And like we said earlier, digital activism is huge right now. And this is a great way, right from our own desktop or phone, which most people are using a phone, that we can do activism. So that sounds amazing. And you have one last module to talk about, and that's empowering yourself as an advocate. Maybe Jeff, because we haven't heard anything from him in a while. Jeff, how would you, we'll let Kimberly explain the program, but empowering yourself as an advocate, how have you as a vegan advocate, how has your experience been? Tell us about that a little bit.
I don't know. I don't know if I feel particularly qualified to answer this question.
Well,
I'm
sure you're more qualified than you think.
Can I just jump in for a second? Because we had a panel on Thursday, and actually it was a Q&A, and one of the questions was to our panelists, which Jeff was on, was how do you process all of the pain of what we go through? I mean, Jeff, more than anybody, was an undercover investigator for so many years and saw the worst things that any human sees. And Jeff, you did talk about how important it is to make sure that you take care of yourself a bit?
My experience, and I think this is not unique to just investigators, but I found that working in farms and slaughterhouses, probably not surprisingly, you get desensitized shockingly quickly. I might be kind of sort of going off on a slightly different tangent than the intent of your question, but
just go. It's great.
I know, like, before doing investigations, like, I'd seen undercover footage before, and you see people abusing animals, doing horrible things to animals, and at least for me, and I think a lot of people, like, you think, like, how could somebody be so evil to treat an animal so cruelly? And so that's the impression you have of people, well, the people in the footage, and to maybe a lesser degree, just people in animal agriculture or animal abuse industries in general. After working in investigation in farms and slaughterhouses, my opinion drastically changed. And it's because you know these people on a personal level. Like, when you see somebody abusing an animal, you don't know their story at all. You know, that's all you know about them. And it's so easy to feel hatred towards somebody doing something like that. The reality is, they are so much like you and me. When I was working in a slaughterhouse, and say it was a chicken slaughterhouse, and your job is to hang up chickens in the shackles on the slaughter line. And at the start, you feel kind of the way someone would feel when they watch Earthlings. And in my head, like, I'd be apologizing to each animal, and that lasted for a week and a half, 2 weeks, and then it went away, and then you didn't feel any of that. Then you actually get annoyed when an animal is fighting for their lives,
Oh my God.
totally justifiably, but they're making your job a little bit harder, and the empathy for that animal goes away. So if that can happen to me, someone who went into the field, into that place for animal rights reasons, of course that can happen to somebody else who went into a job like that, not as a vegan. And yeah, when you see somebody abusing an animal in a video, it seems shocking, and we tend to look at the egregious types of animal abuse, like, say, somebody punching an animal or kicking an animal, abusing them in some way that isn't related to their actual job. But when you actually look at that kind of abuse and compare it to the standard practice, like, that same person who's punching and kicking a pig, the hour before, their job was to cut off their tails, cut out their testicles. Like,
I know we don't want to belabor too long, but and be too graphic. But yes, it's incredibly cruel, and I've heard this from other undercover people as well, saying that you become desensitized, and that it's incredible how you can actually identify with people that are doing the job. So
they don't know they're doing something wrong. Like, they're not looking both ways before they do what in some cases even is criminal animal abuse. So they don't know. They really are just like you and me. I could easily have been any one of them. So this is actually why I'm really looking forward to Melanie Joy's module, just because I think that's such an important piece that is really needed in the community, so people can hopefully not do some of the things that I did when I first became a vegan. I was an angry vegan. I reinforced that stereotype, unfortunately, but hopefully people can listen to Melanie Joy and others with similar messages and avoid those same pitfalls.
Okay, so the last module, let's just go ahead and let Kim finish up about that one. We've got about 10 minutes left, so let's kind of wrap that up. And
Well,
Anything else you want to talk about?
and so this last module, it really jumps off of what Jeff said. What Jeff is getting at is the idea that as animal activists, it's important for us to understand people. It's important for us to not get just so angry that we can't reach people anymore. We can't understand them. The moment that we judge somebody is the moment we lose our ability to influence them. And so it's important for us all to take a very strong, consistent stand in what we do. But we believe that it needs to be from a place of some tenderness and understanding. And so this module in week 6 is really about how do we maintain our humanness, our compassion, not just for animals but for people, for these various situations. It's about how do we find our own inner resilience, and how do we continue to feed that so that we don't burn out, so that we don't have compassion fatigue. I imagine my co-panelists here would have seen many people that become just gung-ho in that first year of finding out stuff, and they go so hard, and it's so hard on their system, and they alienate everybody, and they end up dropping out. You never hear from them again. And so we don't want that. We want to create loving activists who are in it for the long haul, who are able to activate their skills, and are able to be persuasive, and are able to be inspiring. We want a whole army of people that can inspire a more compassionate, inclusive sort of lifestyle. And so so everything in this module is around that, is around finding your inspiration. It's about really making sure your health is rooted, as a vegan. If you're dealing with trauma, as many of us that have worked in the animal advocacy movement have, it's about how do you deal with some of that trauma? How do you start healing some of that? And I'm going to be teaching about how on a regular basis do you process the pain that's inherent in this movement, and in activism in general. I'm also going to talk about tools for better focus and productivity. We've got a lot to do and not many people to do it. So we really want to make sure people are armed with all of the tools that they need to be powerful, sustainable, and actually have some joy in their lives, so that we can be inspiring to others.
Great. Well, thank you so much for informing us about this. So, Dr. Sherwood, would you just give us a little bit more, just kind of wrapping things up, anything you'd like to add about to tell people that are kind of on the fence? I don't see how anybody would be about this, but is there anything you want to include about it, just as we're wrapping things up, about the program?
So there are a couple of things that people can do. Obviously, one thing is to surely support products that haven't been tested on animals, right? So if you buy cosmetics and lotions and shampoos and things like that, always support those brands that do not do animal testing. There are certain products like pesticides, we don't have a choice at the moment. So they are, tested on animals, and drugs. Every single drug on the market today has gone through animal testing. But don't stop taking your medications, because that's how it is at the moment. But it is going to change. So in the meantime, do little things. And if you're donating to a charity, a medical research charity, make sure your money goes to human-based methods. Make sure your money doesn't go into animal-based testing. I don't know how easy it is to kind of figure out if they have different streams, but call your medical charities. If you're making that donation, make sure that, stipulate that you want it to go to laboratories like mine, because there are lots of researchers out there who are developing these technologies. And this, what I'm holding in my hand right now, this is called organ on a chip technology. And these little holes here, this is where you can actually put human tissue samples and do drug testing and chemical safety testing. And this is a technology that's up and coming that will replace a large amount of animal testing in the future. So people who are doing this type of work, they need the support. I mean, one of the biggest hurdles I personally have, I would be doing so much more if I had the money for it. So it's contribute in whatever way you can, and to educate more people. It's not about fighting with the researchers who animal testing, but it's more about facilitating a system so that everyone can shift from it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think Charu says it gives the essence of what the academy is about, and that is all of us, these leaders like Charu and Jeff. They need again all this ground support. They need people to be changing things on a societal level so that their work can go further. That their work can kind of just sort of cruise on our ground level work. So, for example, Charu, like I know for me, every time I am looking at donating to a charity, a medical charity, I'm even though I might know, I still send an email and say, hey, I would love to donate to you. Do you test on animals? And then, and my last exchange, I actually had a great exchange with the person that I was talking to, and she said, we're going to take these concerns to our board, because I gave a lot of information actually from your institute, and it was really, and if they hear that from enough people, if we've trained enough people to do little actions like that, that is what's going to support this bigger societal change in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we're just about out of time, folks. I wanted to thank you all so much for coming on. If anybody came in on the tail end, we are talking about the Animal Justice Academy, which is currently, the dates are January 25th through March
5th.
Yes. Yeah. March 5th. You can still sign up. The commitment is you prefer to have people come to the live events, but you can also do both. If you can't be at that event, you maybe watch it this time, but come to another event. That's another way to support and be a vegan activist. Yeah. So yeah, it's just giving you opportunities, everyone out there, multiple ways that you can help. And I think it's just wonderful, all the work you guys are doing. Jeff, on behalf of everyone, I'd like to thank you so much for your undercover work. That is, I don't know how you do it. I know you got desensitized, but I don't think I could even do the first step. But thank you, because we need someone that can, that strength that you have. And maybe the rest of us can learn from you and get stronger. And Kimberly, thank you so much for all the work you do. And Dr. Charu, thank you so much for being on today. And yes, audience, we'll be back week after next. Dr. Silas Rao is doing the 2026 vegan convergence. And so that will be preempting my show next week, but I will be back the following week. Thank you all so much for watching, and thank you, guests, for being here today. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Yes. Bye.